The next time you crack an egg, stop before you drop the shell in the bin. Hold it for a second. What you are about to throw away is calcium carbonate, one of the most useful substances in a working kitchen and garden. And the reason you have been discarding it your whole life is simply that nobody ever showed you what it does. My grandmother never threw away an eggshell, not one. Every shell that came out of that Lancaster County farmhouse kitchen went somewhere useful. When I was a boy, I thought this was the habit of a woman who could not bear to waste anything. I remember asking her once why she was saving them, and she looked at me the way she looked at any question she found slightly puzzling, and said, "Because they are useful." That was the whole answer. At the time, it seemed too short. I understand now that it was exactly the right length. It was not sentiment. It was the plain knowledge that the shell has real and practical uses, and that throwing it away is the same as pouring out the milk because you already got the butter. I am Levi Yoder. I was raised plain here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the kitchen I grew up in ran on the understanding that what leaves the house as waste should be the irreducible minimum. An eggshell does not have to leave as waste at all. I am going to show you 8 things an eggshell can do in your home and garden that most people have never been told, and by the time I am done, you will look at the bin under your sink differently than you did before you started watching. Before I show you, let me say this plainly. If you want the full collection of the old homestead methods that were handed down in our family, from the garden and orchard to the pantry, cellar, and the everyday keeping of a house, I have gathered them into one simple ebook. You will find it in the description below. Now, let us get back to the topic. Here is what an eggshell actually is, because understanding the material is what makes all 8 uses make sense rather than sound like a list of tricks. An eggshell is approximately 94% calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is the same mineral that makes up limestone, chalk, and the shell of an oyster. It is the form of calcium that plants need to build strong cell walls and that garden soil needs to correct acidity when it has tilted too far toward the acid side. It is mildly abrasive when powdered, gentle enough to clean metal without scratching it. It is mildly alkaline, which means it neutralizes acids wherever it comes into contact with them in the soil, in coffee, in compost. And it is a slow-release material, meaning it does not dump everything it carries all at once, but breaks down gradually over weeks and months, feeding the soil long after you have forgotten you added it. Once you know these 4 properties, you can reason out the uses on your own. The list is not a collection of unrelated tips. It is the same material doing the same few things in different places. The first use is the garden, and it is the most important one. Most residential garden soil becomes progressively more acidic over time, through rain, through decomposition, through the natural chemistry of organic matter breaking down season after season. Acidic soil locks up nutrients plants need, particularly calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus, even when those nutrients are present in the soil in adequate amounts. The plants simply cannot reach them through the acid. Eggshells raise the pH toward neutral and add calcium directly in a form plants absorb gradually as the shell breaks down. Crush the shells as finely as you can, because smaller pieces break down faster and release calcium sooner. Work them into the soil around tomatoes, peppers, squash, and brassicas, which are all heavy calcium users and all prone to blossom end rot when calcium runs short. My grandfather spread crushed eggshells around his tomato plants every spring without fail, and his blossom end rot was almost non-existent in the years I remember watching him garden. Neighboring gardens that did not do this lost a portion of their tomato crop to the same problem every year. Save the shells through the winter, dry them 20 minutes in a low oven, crush them fine, and you have a full season's worth of soil amendment from what would have gone in the bin. The second use is pest control, specifically against soft-bodied crawling pests. Slugs and cutworms move by muscular contraction across wet soil, and crushed eggshell is to them what a gravel road is to bare feet. Scatter a ring of shell pieces, broken no finer than coarse sand, around the base of plants that slugs target. Your hostas, your lettuce, your strawberries. The sharp edges cut the soft tissue of any slug that tries to cross and cause it to dry out and retreat, or deter it from approaching in the first place. This is the same principle as the commercial diatomaceous earth sold at garden centers for $10 or $15 a bag. Eggshell is not quite as effective, but it is free, and most households that cook eggs have a steady supply. My grandmother refreshed the ring after rain washed it flat and lost very little to slug damage across the years I watched her garden. The third use is the chicken coop, if you keep chickens. If you do not, skip to the next. Laying hens need significant calcium to produce strong shells and will deplete their own bone calcium if their diet runs short, leading to thin-shelled eggs and eventually real health problems for the bird. You can buy oyster shell supplement at any farm store. You can also dry your eggshells and crush them and feed them back. The calcium is the same either way. The one thing you must do is crush the shells completely so the hens cannot recognize them as eggs. A hen that recognizes shells may begin eating her own eggs in the nest, which is a habit nearly impossible to break. Crush them to a powder, and the connection never forms. The fourth use is as a mild abrasive cleaner in the kitchen. Powdered eggshell, ground fine in a mortar or in a clean coffee grinder kept for this purpose, makes a gentle scouring powder for cast iron skillets, stainless steel pans, and the inside of a coffee pot, where tannin stains build up and resist ordinary washing. It is not acidic enough to damage metal and not coarse enough to scratch a surface if it is ground fine. For cast iron in particular, where soap is traditionally avoided because it strips the seasoning built up from years of cooking, a paste of powdered eggshell and water scrubs the cooking surface, lifts the baked-on residue, and rinses clean without leaving anything chemical behind. My grandmother cleaned the cast iron in the farmhouse kitchen this way, rather than reaching for any scouring product from the store, and she did it her whole life. Those pans are in my kitchen now. They show no scratch damage from a lifetime of that treatment, and the seasoning is intact. The fifth use is drainage for container planting. If you are setting up a pot and want to improve drainage without buying perlite or gravel, a layer of clean, dry eggshells at the bottom of the container does the same work. They break down slowly enough to last a full growing season and add calcium to the soil as they go. The shells create space for water to move through, rather than pooling and drowning the roots. It costs nothing and eliminates a separate purchase. The sixth use is seedling cups. The dome of a half eggshell, cleaned and dried and filled with seed-starting mix, makes a perfect individual seedling pot. It is biodegradable, which means when the seedling is ready to go in the ground, you crack the shell lightly at the base and plant the whole thing, shell and all, root system completely undisturbed. There is no transplant shock because there is no transplant in the usual sense. The seedling never leaves its medium. The shell dissolves in the soil over the following weeks and adds calcium to the young plant as it establishes. My grandmother started her tomato seedlings this way every spring, setting the filled shells in an egg carton on the south-facing windowsill in the room that caught the most light. The seedlings went into the ground without any of the wilting and setback that comes from moving a young plant out of a plastic pot, because nothing separated the roots from the soil they had grown in. A plastic pot creates a boundary between the seedling and the ground. An eggshell has no such boundary. The seventh use is for coffee bitterness, and this is the one that surprises people most. A pinch of ground eggshell added to the coffee grounds before brewing neutralizes some of the acid in the coffee and reduces bitterness without changing the flavor of the cup. The calcium carbonate in the shell reacts with the acidic compounds and softens them. For anyone who finds strong coffee hard on the stomach or bitter on the palate, this is a free and straightforward adjustment. My grandfather added a small piece of clean, dry shell to the percolator pot every morning and attributed his ability to drink strong coffee comfortably well into old age partly to this habit. The attribution may or may not be entirely accurate. The chemistry of the bitterness reduction is real and has been documented. The eighth use is in the compost pile. Compost becomes acidic over time as organic material breaks down. Eggshells correct the pH toward neutral and break down slowly relative to most kitchen scraps, which means they release calcium into the finished compost gradually, rather than all at once. If you compost, add every shell. If you do not compost, a simple pile in a corner of the garden with shells added regularly will become something genuinely useful within one season. The shells are the one kitchen scrap most households generate in a truly steady supply. Think about what the bin under your kitchen sink has been receiving every time you cooked eggs. Calcium your garden needed. A pest barrier that cost nothing, a scourer for the cast iron, a seedling cup, a coffee softener, a drainage layer for the container. a compost builder. All of it gone before breakfast most mornings, without a thought, because the shell looks like nothing when you hold it. Every shell that went in that bin was something useful that was never used, and it was not waste by nature, it was waste by habit, and that habit was only waiting for a reason to change. You have 8 of them now. Tell me in the comments which of these 8 you are going to try first, and tell me your county and your state while you are there. I love knowing who is out there and what kind of garden or kitchen they are keeping. I read every one. Next time I am going to show you how my grandmother used coffee grounds in 6 different ways that had nothing to do with compost, including one use in the garden that outperforms several commercial products I could name. Coffee grounds and eggshells together, in the right application, make one of the most effective soil amendments a kitchen garden can have, and it all comes from what most households throw away before breakfast. The people who built this country with their own hands knew things we are only just now beginning to remember.